Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Sign or there's no wedding, his mother huffed, clutching the pristine prenup like a royal decree. Our son has everything to lose. For a moment, I said nothing. My hand hovered over the paper, pen poised like a knife about to carve my future. The chandelier's reflection danced across the polished table, and every pair of eyes, his mother, his father, even him, was fixed on me with the same expectation, compliance. Then, softly but clearly, my lawyer leaned toward me and murmured, "Shall I remind them you funded his entire startup?" The room froze. His mother blinked, confusion cutting through her confidence. His father's jaw went slack, and even he, the man I had loved, supported, and believed in, shifted uncomfortably, like someone caught in a lie they never had to say out loud. The truth, heavy and sharp, flooded my memory in fragments, sleeping on a futon so he could pay developers, skipping vacations to cover his equipment loans, selling my grandmother's bracelet to keep his company alive during the pandemic, tapping into my savings, the account I'd built since college, to give him room to dream, and now I was the liability? I let the silence stretch, let it sting. Then I placed the pen gently on the table, not signing, but stopping. "I didn't complain when your son had nothing," I said, my voice steady but alive with quiet fire. "I didn't ask for guarantees when I was the one taking the risk. Everything he's built started with my faith, my savings, and my sacrifice. So if anyone in this room has something to lose, it's me." His father cleared his throat. His mother's face blanched. My fiancé tried to speak, but the truth doesn't leave room for explanations. It stands on its own. "My loyalty isn't a free asset," I continued. "If this marriage is built on fear, ownership, and protection of only one party, then it isn't a marriage. It's a contract of convenience, no one moved. For once, they were seeing me, not as an accessory, not as a lucky fiancé, but as the architect of the empire their son stood on." I slid the prenup back across the table. "If you want partnership, we talk. If you want control, you can keep the ring." And with that, I stood. His chair scraped as he rose behind me. His voice broke the tension, not in protest but in shame. "Mom, Dad, sit down, we're rewriting it, with her lawyer. Or we're not getting married at all. The irony? That was the first time I felt like a bride." "Sign or there's no wedding," his mother said, each word sharp enough to cut. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't need to. Her tone carried the entitlement of someone who had never once been told no. She placed the prenup folder in front of me like she was delivering divine law, not a legal ambush. Her eyes scanned me slowly, as if she were appraising something she already believed she owned. "Our son has everything to lose." The way she emphasized everything made it clear. She saw me as nothing. His father sat beside her, leaning back with the smug certainty of a man who believed legacy outranked love. My fiancé shifted in his seat, avoiding my eyes, pretending to be neutral, like this was between the women and not something he'd allowed. The air in the room felt staged. Heavy drapes, leather chairs, a marble table meant to intimidate. Even the clock on the wall ticked like a countdown to obedience. They expected me to pick up the pen, smile politely, sign where they pointed, and be grateful to enter their golden lineage. My fingers hovered above the document, but not in fear, only in disbelief at how casually they dismissed everything I was and everything I had done. They didn't ask if I had something to protect. They assumed I didn't. They didn't negotiate. They dictated. Behind my calm face, a storm was forming. Not loud, just powerful. I wasn't raised to rattle at ultimatums or shrink under pressure. I had built my own life long before their son and I ever crossed paths. Still, I stayed still, letting them believe I was hesitating the way they expected, out of intimidation. They had no idea I was simply choosing the exact moment to let them choke on their assumptions. In that frozen moment, their words echoed against memories they knew nothing about. They saw me as someone arriving to benefit, but never someone who had invested first. They pictured themselves guarding an empire, unaware that their so-called empire had once been hanging by threads I held together. I remembered those late nights when he was drowning in doubt, his startup burning through savings faster than hope could replenish. I was the one who believed when investors laughed him out of rooms. I was the one who told him to keep going when he was ready to walk away. I wired money from my own account without contracts or conditions, Because my support came from love, not leverage. They didn't know I drained the savings I built working 2 jobs after college, money I never planned to spend on anyone but myself. They didn't know I sold the diamond bracelet my grandmother gave me, the only heirloom I owned, just so he could pay his developer and keep his team afloat. They didn't know I turned down a promotion because moving cities would have meant abandoning the company I helped him grow from the ground up. They hadn't seen me spending weekends reviewing his pitch decks, rewriting proposals, practicing with him in our apartment until his voice stopped shaking. They didn't know I was the one who introduced him to the mentor who became his first major backer. They didn't see me crying in secret when bills piled up and everything was on the line, because I refused to let him feel guilt for something I chose willingly. To his parents, I was just the woman their son was marrying. To their son, I was the reason he still had a business to put his name on. So when my lawyer spoke, it wasn't a threat. It was a reminder. Not just to them, but to me, a reminder that I had already risked more than they ever imagined. And that the silence I held wasn't weakness, it was restraint. The silence after my lawyer spoke didn't just linger, it landed. You could feel the shift, sharp and immediate, like oxygen being sucked out of the room. His mother's fingers tightened around the edge of the prenup folder, but her certainty wavered. She looked at me differently, not with respect, not yet, but with the startled realization that she might have miscalculated. His father, who had been leaning back with that easy arrogance, straightened in his chair as if trying to reassemble his authority. His brows drew together, not in concern for fairness, but in disbelief that the narrative had changed without his permission. This was supposed to be a tidy transaction, his family protecting their assets from the outsider, not a moment where they were the ones unprepared. My fiancé's reaction was the loudest without a single word. He didn't flinch when his parents spoke to me like I was disposable, but now his eyes dropped to the table. He knew exactly what my lawyer meant. He knew the truth in that sentence because he lived it with me, because he'd let me help him, lean on me, build on my sacrifices without ever once stopping his family from believing the opposite. I didn't need to speak. My silence was its own declaration. My lawyer's words hovered over us like a spotlight no one asked for, but everyone could suddenly see under. No one moved. No one reached for the pen again. Even the air grew still, as if the room itself understood that the script had just been ripped in half. Let the weight of the silence do what words couldn't. Their assumptions had cracked, and now they were forced to look at me without the veil of their arrogance. But I wasn't done, because this wasn't just about a prenup. This was about dignity. I rested my hands on the table, not in panic or submission, but with a steadiness that came from finally choosing myself. When I spoke, my voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Power, when it's real, doesn't shout. I didn't ask for his money then, and I'm not after it now, I said evenly, my gaze sweeping across each of them. But don't insult me by pretending I'm here to take from something I helped create. His mother opened her mouth, maybe to protest or recover her footing, but I continued, calm, deliberate, unshaken. You talk about what your son has to lose, I said, but what about what I've risked? What I gave up? You see me sitting here and you think I'm the one stepping into privilege. But I was the safety net long before any of you showed up with contracts and conditions. I turned to him, not with softness, but with expectation. If this marriage requires me to sign away my protection while pretending I contributed nothing, then it's not love. It's ownership. He looked up, guilt flickering across his face. It was the first time he'd truly seen the divide between what his family assumed and what I had lived. I didn't push the document away, and I didn't sign it. I simply placed the pen down in the center of the folder and spoke the only truth that mattered. I won't marry into a family that sees me as a threat or a charity case. If we're building a life together, it begins with mutual respect. Not legal muzzles and convenient amnesia. The room didn't just fall silent then. It surrendered to the reality that I wasn't the one being tested. I was the one drawing the line. He stayed silent for a moment too long, and that pause told me everything before he said a word. It wasn't just his parents who had underestimated me. He had too. Maybe not out of malice, but out of comfort, out of habit. Out of being a man who'd never had to explain where his success actually came from, but something in him shifted as he looked at me, really looked. No panic, no defensiveness, just the slow dawning realization that I wasn't asking for validation. I was claiming space I had already earned. He reached for the prenup, not the pen, and closed the folder. His parents watched, stunned into stillness. "If there's a contract," he said finally, voice low but steady, "then it reflects both of us. Or there is no contract, and no wedding." His father's mouth opened in protest, but he didn't get the chance to continue the legacy speech forming behind his eyes. His mother looked like she'd just watched a chess move she hadn't seen coming, one that toppled the board instead of the king. But this moment wasn't about their approval, and I wasn't measuring the room for permission. I'd already decided that I would rather walk away alone than walk into a marriage where my worth had to be negotiated. I stood, smoothing the front of my outfit with the quiet certainty of a woman who has nothing to prove, but refuses to be erased. I didn't slam a door, didn't raise my voice, didn't perform outrage for effect. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply refuses to bow. If they wanted a bride who would shrink to fit their narrative, they'd invited the wrong woman to the table. As I walked toward the exit, no one tried to stop me, not because they didn't care, but because they finally understood something they should have known all along. I was not afraid to leave a table I helped set. At the doorway, he caught up to me. Not to convince me to stay on their terms, but to speak on his own for the first time in this entire conversation. "I should have defended you before it came to this," he said quietly. There was no rehearsed apology, no excuses, just honesty. "We'll do this our way. Or not at all." I paused, not out of hesitation, but to look him in the eye and measure the truth in his words. And for the first time that day, I saw a partner, not a beneficiary of my sacrifice. Not a son living by his parents' script, but a man finally ready to stand on equal ground. We didn't walk back into the room. We walked out of it. Not as two people escaping conflict, but as two people choosing clarity over performance. Later, with new terms drafted by my lawyer, we rebuilt the agreement from mutual respect, not fear. It protected us both, our assets, our efforts, our futures. Not because I demanded power, but because I refused to surrender it. And his parents? They didn't apologize, but they adjusted. Life has a way of humbling people when silence stops protecting their assumptions. I didn't sign away my value to earn marriage. I defined it and let marriage rise to meet me. To anyone reading this, love is not proven through sacrifice of self. You do not have to shrink, sign blindly, or stay silent to deserve a future. If someone asks you to give up your power to keep your place, walk away. The right person will walk with you, not ahead of you, and never over you.